Hare Krishna and welcome to the Bhagavad-gita lecture. Today we continue on chapter 6 and we will try to cover verses 18 and 19. Let me see just to be sure. Yeah, 18 and 19. Okay, so Dhyana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. This chapter is about this. So let's chant the invocation mantras. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Jai. So Lord Krishna is saying in Sanskrit, Yada vinayatam chitam atmanyeva vatistate nispriha sarva kamebhyo yukta iti ushyate tada. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ISKCON. So Lord Krishna says, when the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. Purport. The activities of the yogi are distinguished from those of an ordinary person by his characteristic cessation from all kinds of material desires, of which sex is the chief. A perfect yogi is so well disciplined in the activities of the mind that he can no longer be disturbed by any kind of material desire. This perfectional stage can automatically be attained by persons in Krishna consciousness, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 4, verses 18 to 20. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor Vashang Sivai Kunta Gunanu Varnane Karau Harer Mandira Marjanadisho Shrutim Shakara Chutasat Kathodaye Mukundalingalaya Darshane Drishao Tad Brit Yagatra Sparshenga Sangamam Granang Shatat Pada Saroja Saurabe Shrimat Tulasya Rasanang Tad Arpite Padau Hare Padau Hare Kshetra Padanu Sarpane Shiro Rishikesha Pada Vivandane Kamang Shadasyena Tukamakamyaya Yato tamashloka shrayaratihi. So the translation to these beautiful verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam goes as follows. King Ambarish first of all engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Then, one after another, he engaged his words in describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord, his hands in mopping the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing of the activities of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the transcendental form of the Lord, his body in touching the bodies of the devotees, his sense of smell in smelling the scents of the lotus flowers offered to the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulasi leaf offered at the lotus feet of the Lord, his legs in going to places of pilgrimage and the temple of the Lord, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in executing the mission of the Lord. All these transcendental activities are quite befitting a pure devotee. End quote. So Prabhupada's purpose continue. This transcendental stage may be inexpressible subjectively by the followers of the impersonalist path, but it becomes very easy and practical for a person in Krishna consciousness, as is apparent in the above description of the engagements of Maharaj Ambarish. Unless the mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord by constant remembrance, such transcendental engagements are not practical. In the devotional service of the Lord, therefore, these prescribed activities are called arshana, or engaging all the senses in the service of the Lord. The senses and the mind require engagements. Simple abnegation is not practical. Therefore, for people in general, especially those who are not in the renounced order of life, transcendental engagement of the senses and the mind, as described above, is the perfect process for transcendental achievement, which is called yukta in the Bhagavad-gita. And then I will read verse number 19. Yata dipo nivattasto nengate sopama smrita yogino yata chittasya yunjato yogamatmanaha. Translation: Lord Krishna says, as a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist whose mind is controlled remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendental self. Purport: a truly Krishna conscious person, always absorbed in transcendence, is in constant undisturbed meditation on his worshipable Lord, is as steady as a lamp in a windless place. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I was thinking also that we could read a little bit the study guide from the Bhaktivedanta Academy. Can be interesting because they have compiled what the previous acharyas in our sampradaya has said regarding these verses. In this verse, Shantim Nirva. So I'm going back a little bit to verses 16 and 17 so that we can remember a little bit what. No, sorry. Here it is. I don't go back. It's verses 18 and 19. Yeah, I found it. So the Lord next describes the advanced yogi. So these are for verse 18 and 19, which we are reading today. When the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendental self. The advanced yogi controls his mind by always thinking of Krishna. Such an advanced yogi is devoid of material desires. Actually, it is not possible to become desireless. The desire for sense gratification must be overcome by the process of purification. But the desire for service to Krishna should be cultivated. A yogi who is free of material desires is always steady in his meditation on Paramatma. In other words, to become steady and determined, the yogi should practice brahmacharya. Srila Prabhupada explains this in The Perfection of Yoga. So that's another book which Prabhupada has written. So Prabhupada is explaining, when a candle is in a windless place, its flame remains straight and does not waver. The mind, like the flame, is susceptible to so many material desires that with the slightest agitation, it will move. A little movement of the mind can change the whole consciousness. Therefore, in India, one seriously practicing yoga traditionally remained brahmachari or celibate. there are two kinds of brahmachari. One is completely celibate, and the other is grihastha brahmachari. That is to say, he has a wife, he does not associate with any other woman, and his relation with his own wife are strictly regulated. In this way, either by complete celibacy or restricted sex life, one's mind is kept from being agitated. And then in the next verses, which will be next Wednesday, we are going to read about what is samadhi and explain the different parts of the Ashtanga Yoga and translate them into the Bhakti-yoga. What happens is actually Ashtanga Yoga actually comes from Bhakti-yoga. We have to be aware of that. It's not that Bhakti has borrowed some elements from the Ashtanga Yoga, but it's actually Ashtanga Yoga has borrowed the elements or the principles from Bhakti, but it's just like a little bit more separated from Bhagavan. So it's because, as I told before, the three aspects of ultimate truth is Brahman, impersonal Brahman, Paramatma, who is situated everywhere and in the heart, and then Bhagavan. So in Bhagavan, you have Paramatma and Brahman. So you have Satchid Ananda. So Bhagavan means Satchidananda Vigraha. So the form, in that form of Lord Krishna, you will find Brahman, you will find Paramatma. So, and the service to Krishna means, all these different aspects of which are described in the Yoga Sutras, and including Samadhi. So these from asana to Samadhi, or yama, niyama, and all those things we have explained before. So those comes originally from Bhakti. But since people are not so inclined to personalism, so then they separate it a little bit from service to Krishna. But the service to Krishna is the goal of all yoga systems. So we have to understand this. It's very important. And also that the real yogi, which we will see later in the end of this chapter, what Krishna is saying, or the best of the yogis is saying, that's actually the Bhakti yogi, the one who is connected with him through Bhakti. And as we can see here in the verses regarding Ambarish Maharaj, or the King Ambarish, the verses which I was reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So from here we can see that he's a king. So a king is very, very busy managing a kingdom. So one could wonder, how is it possible for him to have any time for spiritual life? Or we could also say, people who are busy working or busy with family life, how can they have time for spiritual life? And also many people can come with that, how do you say, excuse. Later on, when I retire, then I will start my spiritual life. But like they say in Spanish, mañana never comes. Or it's like a mixture between English and Spanish. Mañana never comes. Tomorrow never comes. If we postpone something, I will do it tomorrow, or I will do it that day, then the big risk is you will never do it. So that's why Bhakti is very good for busy family people, and especially Arshana. Arshana, or Prabhupada explained, Arshana means engaging the mind and the senses and in the service of the Lord. So which means that you may have, a picture of the Lord at home, you may have an altar, you may have deities at home, and then everything is centered around the deities. Or let's say you live in a community and the temple is in the middle of the community and everything is centered around the deity worship in that community. So in that way, will actually be the easiest way to connect one's life, the activities, the result of one's work, and then connect that and offer that to Krishna and spiritualize one's work, spiritualize one's activities, one's senses, and one's mind. So like that, one can advance spiritually. So is this clear, or do we have anyone who has any questions regarding this? I see Anders is here. Very much welcome. No comments? Okay. Okay, so let's continue. Yeah, so Ambarish Maharaj, he was a pure devotee of the Lord. And despite him being very busy managing a kingdom, then this verse is actually showing, these verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam is explaining how he is all the time connected with Krishna, because the problem with the material consciousness is that we forget the Lord all the time. So therefore, we need some kind of, it's called sadhana bhakti. We need some kind of lifestyle, some practice, spiritual practice, which will help us to remember the Lord. So the number one rule, which is all the other rules are actually servants of that number one rule, is always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So that's because in the material world, we have tendency to always forget him. So a busy person like King Ambarish has all the reason to say, I'm sorry, I can't practice spiritual life. I'm busy running a kingdom, but here we can see that how is he engaging his mind? He's engaging his mind by meditating on Lord Krishna's lotus feet. We can do the same. We have received the Hare Krishna mantra, so we can chant the Hare Krishna mantra in the morning, in the evening, in the middle of the day, or whenever we can. And then his words, he engaged them by describing Lord Krishna's transcendental qualities. So this is quite interesting, the qualities of the Lord. In the material world, we are actually very much in contact with Krishna's qualities. We may not notice that it's actually Krishna which we are fascinated by. Let's say if you plant a flower in the garden, so it's the flower which is the attractive one. In all the greenery, you will see that flower, the red color, which makes everything more beautiful. So that it's not the rose itself, but it is actually the beauty, which is Krishna's transcendental quality. It's reflecting Krishna's transcendental quality, which is attractive. It's not a rose, but it's that quality, which is actually non-different from Krishna. And remember, Krishna means all attractive. And one of his opulences is beauty. So like that, if we are a little bit thoughtful in our life, then we can, whenever we are fascinated by something, we have to take a step further and say, okay, why am I fascinated by this? Which quality of the Lord is it that is fascinating me about, this thing here? It can be, ice cream in the summertime, or some adventurous movie. So this adventure, for instance, that is one of Krishna's quality also, which gives that thrill, or the taste of some ice cream, for instance. So like that, Krishna is saying in Bhagavad-gita, he's the taste of water. And because without water, if our mouth would be completely dry, then we can't taste anything. So without the water, there is no taste. So that's why Krishna is saying, I'm the taste of water. So whatever we taste, which we like, it's actually because Krishna is the taste. So like that, we can always remember and be thoughtful, because like I might have told you before, I met one priest, and we were all together, and he was sitting by my side, and he said, I have never met anyone in my whole life as a priest, he was maybe around 60, who has ever told me that he has met God. So it's kind of a little bit unfortunate that he, at the end of his life, has still not understood that God is actually everywhere and we meet him every day. It's just that we need to understand that he is with us all the time. He is here through his qualities. In the material world, he is here through the qualities. That is the Brahman aspect of Krishna. He is in the heart, that's the Paramatma aspect. He's in every atom. Without Paramatma in the atom, there is no movement at all. And then he's there as Bhagavan. So the Bhagavan feature may be more difficult to realize, but not so difficult, because in the Hare Krishna mantra, you will meet the Bhagavan feature. In the deity, you will meet the Bhagavan feature, in Srimad Bhagavatam and so on. So it's just that we need to reconnect with the Lord, because we have alienated, alienate, how do you say, like become more alienated. I can't remember the exact word in English, but to be a little bit like strangers with somebody who is actually the most close to us. So it's an artificial situation in which we are in the material world. So as now that we finally have this human body, we have actually that opportunity to reconnect with the Lord. And it's a very rare opportunity to have a human body, because it takes actually 8 million births before one can get a human body. And unfortunately, many people are just wasting it in nonsense activities, just trying to stimulate their senses with the sense objects, and becoming just very unhappy and very frustrated and angry. And so many suicides are going on, and it's just people just becoming crazy because they're trying to find actually Krishna, because Krishna is the only one who can give that deep satisfaction in the heart. So here we are very fortunate to learn how we can actually connect with the Lord. But I would say the most important is Hare Krishna mantra. And then, by being thoughtful, then we can reconnect with him. Like, analyzing the qualities. And then in this Srimad Bhagavatam verses, we can see Ambarish Maharaj, he uses his hands to clean the temple of the Lord. He's using his ears to hear about the activities of the Lord. He's using the eyes to see the transcendental form of the Lord, and his body to touch the bodies of other devotees, because devotees are actually spiritualized. So then when let's say you embrace a good friend, then you also become, inspired in spiritual life. And he's using his senses, his sense of smell, to smelling the sense, let's say the flowers which have been offered to Krishna, the incense which has been offered to Krishna. And that is also giving back, this inspiration in spiritual life. The tongue to taste the tulsi leaf or the prasadam, which has been offered to Krishna. And then when one goes to India for pilgrimage, or like we have one family from Oulu who is traveling around, they are doing a pilgrimage tour in Scandinavia. They're going from one temple to the other, and even they came to our house. We have here a small little temple and deity worship in our house. And so like that, one is using so many different senses and the mind in order to connect with the Lord always. And then his head he was using to offer obeisances to the Lord, and the desires is like, how can I spread Krishna consciousness? And yeah, so all these transcendental activities are one can do for the Lord, and one may not think about it so much, but one is actually always engaged in the service of the Lord, and one feels alive because, like with my husband, we don't have, you know, devotee neighbors here, so we just feel a little bit horrorized to think about that these people don't have any spiritual life, and it feels like a horror movie, you know, like what is the goal of those people if there is no spiritual aspirations? It's just, you know, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and then, you know, longing for something, some type of happiness which hopefully will come one day but never really comes, longing for something in the future, some kind of happiness which one is longing for, and then what? Then we die, and that's it. So for the devotee, there is the promise. Krishna is promising, you know, whatever little progress you may do in spiritual life, then you will start from there in your next life. So there's always this promise that, you know, we come closer and closer to Krishna from lifetime after lifetime. Hopefully we can go back to Godhead in one lifetime, but not so many can do that. So at least we have that hope that we continue, so we can come in contact with Krishna in the next life. I mean, we are already in contact with him actually, but just be more conscious that we are actually with him all the time. So yeah. So does anyone have any questions regarding these topics for today, or maybe other topics also, which we have been discussing before? My husband is very silent today. I don't know if you have something you would like to add. Or Ashwini or Anders, you have something to say?
No, no, Mataji. It was very, very good.
Okay, thank you. Anders,
And very deep and very deeply explained each and everything.
No, thank you. Thank you. Anders, you have something you would like to say?
Not right now.
All right.
Don't have any questions. I'm still a beginner, so yeah.
Yeah, no problem. You can always ask questions even if you're a beginner.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay, so I would like to say one thing which I think is very important, which I have not mentioned in a long time. It's actually that we have, the soul can have 5 types of relationship with the Supreme Lord. And that's the neutral relationship, which means you just admire him from the distance, but there is no real interaction. And then the other relationship is that of service, and which is dasya. And then there is friendship, like Arjuna and Krishna. They are in the relationship of friendship. Dasya service would be like Ramachandra being served by Hanuman. And then we have parental relationship, Vatsalya rasa. So like Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, they see Krishna as their son, although he's God. Obviously, he's the source of them, but they like to have that relationship with Krishna, you know, being protective and seeing him as their child. And then we have the conjugal rasa. So that's like the queens of Dwarka who are married with Krishna, or the gopis, which in the pastimes they are married with a husband. They already have a husband, but they see Krishna as their lover. So this is, you know, very transcendental subject matter. Like Prabhupada, he is explaining that in the material world you have a tree. No, the spiritual world, the tree is standing like this up in the normal way, but in the material world, you have the reflection of the tree in the surface. So then the top becomes the lowest in the reflection, which means that the outside marriage relationship in the spiritual world is the topmost love of Godhead, while in the material world, it is the lowest. So he also gives the explanation about you have the gold, and then you have the other metals. So gold is the purest of all the metals, and then all other metals, they get rusty and so on. So they are not, because they are not pure metals. So in the same way, we have also, you know, mixed our love or our understanding about Krishna consciousness may be sometimes mixed with our speculative ideas. So it's very important to understand these very high subject matters from a spiritual master, and I'm just repeating what I have learned from my spiritual master. So so I think I was thinking about this relationship with Krishna, which the soul can have, and ultimately I would say we need to make peace with him, because we are here because we have fallen from our spiritual consciousness, and we are envious of the Lord. We want to control and enjoy the material energy. So that's why we are in the material world. But the only thing we need to do is to just reverse the situation and no longer wanting to control the material energy and enjoy the material energy separated from Krishna. So we just need to reconnect with him. So to become Krishna's friend is actually one of the 9 limbs of bhakti, to become a friend with Krishna and to surrender totally to him. So these are the more advanced stages, but ultimately we need to become his friend again, make peace with him again. So that's very important in the progress of spiritual life. And the progress of spiritual life is actually, we have to know what is the goal, because if we don't know what is the goal, then, you know, in our head, it may be, you know, very little. That's why if we read in Srimad Bhagavatam, especially the Krishna book, we can see all those devotees who are Krishna's eternal associates, that they are face to face with Krishna, and they are having these different types of relationships. And we have to have that faith to understand that, yes, that can also be me one day. One day I can be, you know, together with Krishna and serve him through, you know, one of his eternal associates, serve him through my spiritual master. So we have to have that faith that we will be with him one day, and our life will change very much and will be very different from what it is now. Like now, maybe we don't feel, you know, hardly any connection, but in the the more we advanced, then the more Krishna will be revealing himself also. The more we surrender, Krishna reveals himself. That's what he says in Bhagavad-gita. He reveals himself according to our surrender. So that's something which I wanted to speak about today, because this whole chapter is about controlling the mind and controlling the senses in order to come, how can I say, connect with the Lord. Like, this chapter starts with Krishna saying, control the mind, because when the mind is controlled, is there anything in between us and God when we have managed to control the mind? There is nothing. So the only thing which is in the way is actually the mind. Like if we sit down and try to meditate Hare Krishna mantra, so then we will see that, for some seconds we are able to focus, and then whoops, the mind is somewhere else in the material world again. So, and then we can have to again take the mind back to the mantra and just focus. I find it very helpful to close the eyes for some time, but then there is a movie in the head starting from the mind, and then I have to open the eyes and then close again. So like that, try to concentrate on the Hare Krishna mantra. But once we manage to calm down the mind, then Krishna is there. And also bhakti is about love for God. So the more love we have for someone, then it's very easy to always think about that person. But the less we love that person, then the more we forget about that person. So the more we love Krishna, the more we will always remember him. So it's actually based on love. This whole Krishna consciousness is actually to transform the love for oneself to love for Krishna. So now we are very much, enamored by ourselves and our life and all our desires and our plans, and a little bit of Krishna is, somewhere there. But then the more we turn to him, then we will see that everything will fall into place, all our desires, everything we ever wanted. Our life will become extremely smooth, and, it will be like a very different life from the materialist person's life, very, very different. So he will take care of everything which we need if we just surrender to him. He's saying that in Bhagavad-gita. So there is like really nothing that to worry about. But the more we serve, then the more he will be there in our life also. So I think this is what this chapter is very much about, to focus, to remember him, to connect with him. And the most important thing is to control the mind. And I can give you an example, because controlling the mind is the most difficult. I can give you an exercise. If you, from today, 7 days forward, if you just observe your own mind, what is going on there, and observe how submissive you are to the commands of your mind. How submissive are you? How loyal? How much do you obey? Like, do you obey immediately, or do you think about it a little bit? Do you like analyze, is it a good idea or not a good idea? Or do you immediately obey? So try to see during these days. Would be interesting to hear next week what have been your observations. And also, to control the mind is like we have to separate ourselves from it, but the mind is very, very close. So it's so close that we think this is me. Like, if I'm moving my hands, that close is the mind, because the hands move immediately when I'm thinking about it. So in the same way, when the mind is commanding us to do something, then immediately we move. So right now, as conditioned souls, we are surrendered to the mind. And that's why we have to learn to surrender to a spiritual master. And the spiritual master will teach us how to surrender to Krishna. So that's how it works in this yoga system. So let's say, if you observe your mind, the mind is saying, suggesting, let's do this or that. And it's a material desire. It's a material desire. It's not good for your spiritual life or your spiritual consciousness. So just observe what will happen if you say no. Because sometimes we're afraid to say no to the mind. Why? I don't know. But sometimes we're just afraid that, things will not go well if we say no to the mind. But if we just say no and we just observe how many seconds is actually the mind asking for material sense gratification, it's not very long. And if we can just wait out those few seconds, we will see that the mind actually will calm down. And then after some time, it will again, can we do this? And you say, no, I want to serve Krishna. Let's say I'm reading Bhagavad-gita or I'm chanting Hare Krishna. And the mind starts, can we do this instead? Can we eat something? Or can we do this? And we just tolerate the demands of the mind. And then actually that's how we become more and more spiritually powerful. We will have that spiritual power, which is so important. And the more we train this muscle, then the more probability is that at the end of life, we will be able to remember Krishna. Because we have to learn how to control the mind. And in Bhagavad-gita, later on, you will see Arjuna is saying, I don't know, Krishna, I think controlling the mind is absolutely most difficult. It's, easier to control the wind than controlling the mind. But then Krishna, he's not giving in to that. He's saying, no, just by practice, you will manage. So this is what we do every day. We are practicing and try to manage to control the mind. So mind is very important to control, because once it's a powerful force. Once you manage to control it, Krishna is saying, it will become your best friend. But when it's uncontrolled, it's your worst enemy. So why is it your worst enemy? It's because the mind has been dragging us from lifetime after lifetime in the material world. And at one point we have to say, it's enough. How many lifetimes am I going to allow the mind to dictate? How many lifetimes am I going to allow the mind to control me? So at one point we have to say, now, this is the end. Now I am going to control you, my dear mind. And the mind will not like it. But, if we have some faith in what Srila Prabhupada is saying, because he comes from the spiritual world, and he's the witness of what's going on in the spiritual world. He's the witness of, Krishna. And so then if we just have a little bit of faith, invest something of the faith in what Prabhupada, what he's saying is actually true. So then we can experiment and try, okay, let me, when I'm chanting, let me just be 100% focused on this meditation every day, a little more. And then very quickly, actually, Krishna will reveal himself. And very quickly, we will also become more happy and more satisfied. And yeah, so many other things will unfold themselves also, whatever Krishna wants us to know about the future, we will also know about those things, or what is going on in other people's mind and so on. Like, mystical powers will be there also. But that we can use for our service to Krishna. So that comes along. But the most important is the relationship with Krishna, actually, who is always with us in the heart. Lifetime after lifetime, he is with us. So if we invest a little bit, a few minutes every day to chant his holy name, if very focused, or a few minutes to read about him or speak to other people about him, so then that will satisfy very much, and then we can become his, very intimate devotees. And the spiritual world is waiting for us. Okay. All right. I don't know can you hear me? Because I think I have some internet connection problem. Okay. Yeah. All right. I don't think I have so much more to say about these verses. The most important is the control of the mind. If the mind is controlled, then the senses are controlled. Does anyone has anything to say or question?
Thank you so much. Actually, this was very good because it's a very good observation that we have to observe and see. Then it's a very good homework. Actually, it's for ourselves, like how we control our mind. Yeah. Thank you for this, like giving this observation task.
Yes. Please do that. It's really important. There are different types of exercises which one can do also, like, when you reverse, let's say you catch yourself thinking about something, but then you just reverse it. Why did I start thinking about this thing? And then go back, until you come to the root of what's triggered this memory, for instance, or this desire. So then I don't know, have you done that before, Ashwini? Have you done that, reversing the thoughts?
No, but whatever you told, like at least I will be conscious of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because doing something wrong is, we have to be very conscious of what we are doing. Like we
Yes.
cannot just be doing, like, just like that. No. I mean,
Yeah, like
we have to
zombies.
think. Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
We have
unfortunately.
to, yeah, we have to think, like, is it right or wrong before doing any action?
Yes.
And because even talking to a person also, we have to be very conscious of what we are talking, and not talking too much also. If it is required, we talk, and
Yes,
being
yes.
calm. And then it is very important, because we may talk something wrong, and that might hurt. So while talking also, we have to be very conscious what we are talking, with
Yes,
whom we are
that's true.
talking, and what.
That's true. So that's what I meant when I said that when we are able to control the mind, so then the supersoul will be reached. And when you are in connection with the supersoul, first you will be in connection with the intelligence, which is actually very close to the supersoul. And then the more we advance, we will hear Krishna personally speaking to us and guiding us. That's when we are very advanced, when we have, overcome the lower modes of ignorance and passion and even goodness. So then, let's say, if we want to teach to someone about Krishna consciousness, so then the supersoul will guide us, like, don't say that. And we will not know why, but he's in that person's heart. So he's communicating to us that if you say this thing here, it will actually, that person will not like it. So then say something else. So like that, we develop these mystical powers. You can call it mystical powers, but it's just, being very much connected with Krishna in the heart. And that can also be like, you are a mother Supersoul will tell you, now take care of your child because your child is not feeling well, or, maybe you did something wrong yesterday, now you have to explain yourself. All these things, Supersoul can also communicate these things. Or when we are at work, Supersoul can communicate about our work. So the more we make spiritual advancement, then the more we will also be much more fine-tuned with people, different people, animals, plants, nature. So like that. But these are things which comes, how do you say, it's not our goal, but it's when we advance in Krishna consciousness, so then these things will also be like a gift, so that the life becomes much more smoother. And it's not about right or wrong so much, but we have to think also, right and wrong is also important, but I think more important is what is favorable for my spiritual life, that I have to do, and what is unfavorable for my spiritual life, that I should try to avoid. So some people we might have to avoid, other people we should be more close to, like that. Activities, as we know, the 4 regulative principles, which are making us coming.
Could you give an example for favorable and unfavorable? Just an example.
Yeah. So unfavorable would be, instead of, let's say, reading the Mahabharata or the Krishna book with the family in the evening, then we sit down and watch some movie. And okay, you can do that, but then after that you can have a discussion that, from a Krishna conscious perspective, how has this person been. I mean, it can be so many things one can discuss afterward. So it's just like always trying to connect everything with Krishna. Okay, we may be weak for different types of sense gratification, but then try to use that and connect it with Krishna. So then it's always favorable. Or you like to eat something nice, but then offer it to Krishna first. And when you cook, you think that, oh, this is the Supreme Lord is going to eat this, so it has to be really good. So like that, you can connect everything with him. And then life will have a meaning, have a much deeper meaning, because, I remember when I was 7, I understood that, what is this world? What is this world about? I have observed the grown-up people. They were just working. They have a house, they have a car, and some children, and maybe a pet, and that's it. Is there nothing else that life, is life so superficial that there is nothing more deep than that? I was only 7 years old when I understood there must be something deeper than that. There must be a deeper meaning. Can't just be that, all these superficial things, and then you just die. So thank goodness, I came across Krishna consciousness, because there has to be a deeper meaning. And that deeper meaning, we can give it on a daily basis by connecting with Krishna, because he's the one actually who gives that deeper meaning. So, and also, like, I have observed that people speak so much about love, but they have no idea what love means. So that's also a sad thing, because they think that love means, I love you as long as you gratify my senses. But the day you stop gratifying my senses, then I don't love you anymore. It can be the spouse, it can be, the kids, it can be your friends, it can be your colleagues, whatever. Usually you don't love your colleagues, but so So we can come across many things in this material world, and we may think that I thought I knew, you know, these friends, I thought we had a loving relationship, and then they just knife you, put the knife in your back. And then you will understand, oh, it was actually not so much about us, but it was more about them. And then when you don't please them anymore, so then they turn their back. So, and then you realize, okay, it was actually not love. It was something else. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, so let's try to do this for 1 week.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for
Yeah.
explaining very
Yeah.
detailedly.
Thank you too. It's actually this, what is favorable and unfavorable. You can find this, Prabhupada speaking about it in Bhagavad-gita 1866. That's the conclusion of the Bhagavad-gita in the verse 1866. Yeah, it's one of the 6 steps of surrendering to the Lord. Yeah, but let's try to observe the mind and try to how do you say, become a little bit more stronger on the level of the mind, that you use more than, we use more the intelligence, like, okay, this is actually not favorable, so let's not do it. Let's do something else which is more favorable for our connection with Krishna, for our relationship with Krishna. So we can try to do that. Of course, we should not come in conflict with anyone at the same time. So that's why we need to have that connection with the Supersoul. So it's an art, but eventually we will learn how to do it, and then life will become so smooth. Yeah. All right. So thank you so much for
Thank you so much for today, Mataji.
Thank you too. I'm very thankful that you all came, and I wish you a wonderful Krishna conscious week ahead and strong spiritual life. Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Thank you very
jai.
much.
Thank
Jai
you.
Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.